Makes you wonder who's really running this show, eh? But we aren't there yet. We still have 2 whole scenes with Caine before he starts singing, so let's examine those. The first is arguably my absolute favorite in this episode. Perhaps my favorite in the show, period. The scene of Caine in his office. Where do I even begin? Well, dipshit, you can start with how we got here. Following a flashback to reality, Zuba's about to throw hands with Jax before, surprisingly, Gangle is the one to find her voice and say,
We could argue about it and hurt each other all day long, but that's not gonna help anybody. I think what we need to do now is to just be there for each other.
which, holy fuck, I loved Gangle before, but this just reminded me to never be exactly certain of how much I adore a single character in this show, because they are all so frighteningly human. Pomni supports Gangle's statement, and with some of the rawest animation I have ever seen, and props to Lizzie Freeman for the stellar voice performance in tandem, we actively see the Jester process in real time what she's about to say, the weight of it, and what it would mean for their lives going forward. I keep saying these characters are so frighteningly human because their reactions and emotions are so realistic, and this scene of accepting fate is no exception to the rule that's only been refined through time and access to better tools. But something sticks to me when it comes to this scene. The characters are only speaking among themselves. They don't mention Caine once, they don't even imply that he could potentially be in the same situation as them, and I think that's intentional. Notice the framing of these 2 shots in this scene, one of which directly transitions to Caine's scene. The group is staggered, not entirely unified, but they are all facing each other in some form or fashion. In this bizarre, colorful purgatory, the cast of 6 has somehow managed to carve out a place for themselves where they can just fully be. A more down-to-earth den arrangement in the middle of all the chaos. In a scene that's cut to so quickly, you'd expect the 2 to be happening back-to-back or even in tandem. Caine is completely alone, his chair only facing one thing, his desk. While the couches in the circus den are all facing each other, quite literally framing the players as a found family of sorts, Caine only has his work to call something even close to a friend. Not only that, but this scene also made me realize something strange about the circus that's been in front of my face the entire time. These chairs are too big for Caine. Every chair he's used, his legs have dangled, and now we have a seat that threatens to swallow him in sheer size. It strikes me as a sense of not belonging, but why would he feel that way when we know he created the circus? Why wouldn't he just make chairs that fit him? This scene and his show tune crash out later really seem indicative of someone who never had control, trying desperately to latch on to something. Anything. When he never had a chance. He himself is not certain of his own power and control. Otherwise, why would he overestimate how big he needed to be, or underestimate how small he would feel? Now, I myself am not one to super commit to theories based solely on things the narrative overtly tells us based on itty-bitty nitpicks in animation, but if the theming, shot composition, and symbolism are all screaming in my face that this is how things are gonna go, then I'm gonna follow my gut check. However, I'm well aware that, should this theory be true, it denies Caine some of the agency we believed he'd had in the narrative, which I feel like would detract from his character development and his fate. Namely, that we, the audience, were gaslit into being so certain of who's who when it comes to the AI dots at the beginning of episode 8 that we never thought that the roles might be swapped. See, it feels shaky to me because we have not been led to believe anything else other than what we saw. But some details in the symbolism shown throughout the show, and especially the shot framing of this scene in particular, have me wondering if the truth might be right there. Caine not belonging in spaces he should feel comfortable, Caine not having control over his own tools, like the all-seeing eyes and Bubble as a, quote, supplementary AI, unquote. I don't care that Gooseworks said that's what Bubble was, the same person who lied about there being no more singing in the show. Needless of all the respect I have for Gooseworks and what she's created, I feel like we shouldn't have 100% faith in whatever Goose "Sometimes I lie for fun" works answers in her Tumblr asks, especially considering how willing the characters themselves are willing to lie to us, the audience.
I'm the one that tells lies. Dude, you ruined it.
And the constant recurring framing of Caine being consumed by Bubble, like we're watching history operate in a perpetual loop. Again though, if this is a conclusion to be drawn, then what does this say for Caine's agency as a character? This isn't like Goro Akechi from Persona 5, where he intended to overthrow his bastard dad, but still murdered the loved ones of your friends despite how cool of a motive he had. Royal gives him a chance to not really redeem himself, it's more like he's operating on an enemy of my enemy philosophy. But he collaborates with the rest of the group, and they accept him despite past hangups, because even if they don't forgive him for being a parent life ender, they know, at the end of the day, he's an outcast just like the rest of them. Caine is an AI, a program designed to follow orders, and all the empathy and forward thinking in the world does not help him realize that there are even strings on him to pull. So it begs the question, if he's essentially the dregs of the blue AI instead of the red AI like we're supposed to believe, then has he ever been in control? What motive does that give the red AI then, who may just be Bubble? What's even been the purpose of Caine up to this point? So many questions, so few answers, and I doubt the finale will answer all of them. I am getting fucking lost in the sauce. Let's just pause on that can of worms for now and focus instead on this scene. As Caine is wondering what exactly the circus troupe wants, what exactly he's doing wrong, we never get a shot of him dead on until he wonders if they actually hate him. In that time, we get several shots where, aside from the very first, parts of his body are obscured by elements of the environment. The chair he sits in, one of the adventure memories on the shelf, the fucking rafters of his office. Almost like we're circling him like a hunter would prey in the underbrush. We're just waiting for the opportunity to pounce. There's one question and then one shot I want to draw particular attention to before he asks the question that really twists the knife in my gut. First is when he says,
"Surely they don't want to actually leave me, right?
Put a pin in that. Second, as he says,
I slave over these adventures for them."
We pan to two of the adventures left preserved on the top shelf. Jax's Poacher's Paradise and Zubal's Noir Bar. Plus, we also see Ragatha's softball stadium in a later shot. That got my gears turning, since for all we've seen, Caine always values his own adventures and writing over those of the humans. And two of these he even intervened directly to skip because of his own insecurity. And yet, here we have contradicting evidence. Two of the many suggestion box adventures that he didn't come up with preserved on the top shelf of his own office. The shelves here must be limited in display, since presumably Caine has come up with hundreds, if not thousands, of other adventures, and yet, of the ones he chooses to display, he picks two that he presumably never valued as accents to his other accents, since we see the biomes for Candy Carrier Chaos, Mystery of Mildenhall Manor, and the Favorite Character Awards here too. It makes one wonder that perhaps, just maybe, something is keeping Caine from being as suggestible as he could be. Something made him forget how valuable the suggestion box could be.
Well, if you're all gonna be such critics, why don't you suggest a better one?
We do! Have you not checked the suggestion box once?
Gonna be real, I forgot we had that.
And now back to the show!
As Caine slams down the Rubik's Cube he's been fiddling with but not really committing to, put the shortest term pin in that, he looks up, looking on the verge of tears as he wonders aloud,
I'm starting to get the feeling that they just hate.
And he doesn't get to finish. He is scared of being hated. Listen to the way his voice shakes when he says the word hate.
I'm starting to get the feeling that they just hate.
For as much as he gets frustrated with the humans he's charged with, he does love them boundlessly. Bubble, despite saying there's
No way, Jose. No way, no how.
the humans want to actually leave earlier, if we consider that perhaps those Predator-esque viewpoints are him looking for a weak spot, chooses now to say
Hate.
Why would they hate you when they could just hate you?
He's looping like the song we heard at the very beginning of the show. Day after day after day after day, there's only two possible options here. They hate you, or they hate you. Notice how Caine reacts, not with shock or horror at the thought being suggested to him, but with irritation and later anger and vehemence. Like, this isn't the first time this has happened. Like, over and over again, he's tried to keep these feelings at bay, but they keep coming back until everything bubbles over. Whether or not Bubble is a force intentionally trying to break Caine, or is a personification of the intrusive, insecure thoughts Caine is and has been having, he always floats above Caine in this scene, while the Ringmaster is limited to the immediate space around his desk. Even when Caine tries to meet Bubble on his level and argue back, even when he says,
I do everything for them! Don't they get that I'm trying?
which is way too fucking relatable for me to dig into right now, and Bubble, now multiplying in what feels like an attempt to suffocate Caine, says,
Maybe you're just genuinely bad at this.
before Caine pops the two copies. Something I only noticed on rewatch of this specific scene is that every sentence before Bubble starts using one-word insults is that Caine starts stuttering. A common occurrence for humans when they're nervous, and a common occurrence for computers when they're experiencing performance issues.
Just genuinely bad at this.
Shut up! No. I fixed that. I can solve any problem. I can solve this one. That's what this is. A big puzzle that I need to solve.
While I genuinely struggle to think of what he might be referring to when he says, I fixed that, the dissolution of his own faith in his abilities is palpable here, as he panics and says, I can solve any problem. I can solve this one. That's what this is, a big puzzle that I need to solve. Now, I don't know about you, but describing problems as puzzles to be solved sounds not only like your average computer with only one job, but also the special type of neurodivergence that develops Stockholm Syndrome for the term after playing too much Professor Layton. This bit of animation has always been striking to me. Caine crawls across the desk before stopping to fuss over a bead maze at the end of it. This shot specifically was used in the trailer, and at that time, I genuinely thought that Caine was trying to defuse a bomb. I think the shot composition ringing similar bells to that one scene in the President Pomni adventure in episode 5 is very intentional. Notice how in this specific shot, unless you look very closely, you could misinterpret this structure as being a cartoonishly exposed bomb. However, every time Caine looks away from it, we can very clearly see that it's a children's toy. Technically, you could still refer to a Rubik's Cube as a children's toy as well, but to this day there are still competitions and an active community of people, adults and children alike, who try to solve this funky little box in as short of a time as possible. And then there's dumbasses like me who'd still take the Billy's Dad approach and peel off the stickers and rearrange them to get the answers. And how the fuck you solve this thing? Meanwhile, the bead maze isn't a puzzle at all. Despite the name, there's no choice involved in getting the beads from one side to the other, unless the tracks are so close that they end up getting stuck. It's a children's toy in every sense of the word, where it was specifically designed with very, very young children in mind, recommended for kids of 18 months up to 5 years. Intended to teach, quote, eye-hand coordination, spatial memory, and color and shape recognition through manipulation of the beads in three-dimensional space, unquote. This toy is a toy to everyone else but Caine, who's overcomplicating something simple to the point that its original identity becomes murky and unidentifiable. It's strange. The fact that Caine is fussing over this bead maze like it's the Elysium box, the fact that he crawls across the desk like he's a child desperately learning to walk, it's almost like the show is trying to tell me he's in some kind of I mean, it would make sense given his behavior up to this point, right? Bubble calls him
Defective!
in multiple voices at the same time, and I think Caine is subconsciously recognizing Bubble as a threat. Notice how he looks surprised here for a single moment, pulling his arms inward before putting his hands on his hips with a more aggressive disposition to try and reestablish control. He gets called
Shut up!
Broken! Onward!
like he's a mistake that shouldn't have been brought into this world. And while that's a sentiment Caine echoes in his large-scale breakdown later when he says,
It has to be created.
hearing it said by another person to him in this very moment is a sobering splash of water to the face that I'm certain isn't just a point of view that exists in a vacuum. No one really asks to be born, and it's one thing to feel yourself that maybe I shouldn't be here. What's the point? That's literally the inciting incident of a wonderful life. It's entirely another for someone else to tell you you shouldn't be here. It's a phrase that, while maybe not spoken in so many words or even spoken, period, likely resonates with a lot of people who identify with this jovial little juggernaut. The camera revolves around Caine in this beautiful shot that fully illustrates his slipping grip on his self-worth, his passion, his purpose as he pops every last one of Bubbles' copies only for more to appear in their place. Sneaking up behind him and instilling him with fear. You can see his teeth chattering realistically as Bubble approaches from behind, taunting him by saying,
Maybe you deserved to be abandoned.
as he panics and manages to successfully drive him off, until he turns and Bubble is still there. Caine is reflected on Bubble's surface like he's already been eaten by the beast, with Bubble reflected back in Caine's eyes like the last thing prey sees before the jaws of predator close around it. As Bubble speaks with all the acid of someone who knows what real hatred is.
You really were the lesser of the two. You ruined this.
Bubble finally manages to push Caine to his limit.
Enough!
Caine reacts by slamming his fists on the table, threatening to shatter the very structure he created, as it glitches and stutters under his hands. And Caine starts directing his own anger, his own insecurities, his own self-hate at the humans?
Who do they think they are? I give them everything, and they spit in my face! They only think about themselves. They're spoiled! They won't abstract. They won't leave me.
But Bubble is the one who's been provoking him, assumedly from jump, unless he is just acting as a new vocalization of Caine's inner thoughts. But considering his grin widens by millimeters upon seeing that Caine is taking his bait, I'm inclined to believe that he's his own agent of Satan here. Yes, it is a Curtis Connor reference. Yes, I may, because I feel like it. Shut up.
Uh-oh, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard.
So why would he lash out at the people he's supposed to be taking care of? Why would he continue allying with the creature that only serves to confuse him and throw him off track and not provide anything substantial to his own needs, even detract from his own needs? What's the point of keeping such a toxic little ball of mean bullying behavior around unless he physically can't get away?
Right, Rapunzel, you are not leaving this tower!
Caine starts directing his own anger, his own insecurities, his own self-hate at the humans, as his office and presumably his own world begin to destabilize around him. We get this shot where Don't say wood. Roddick's question? Fuck! Where most of the fandom has gone on to say this is where he goes full am, and yet he never uses the word hate in this scene at all, save for when he's almost about to entertain the thought that he is the one who is hated. He is angry, but he is not hateful. He screams about how he won't be left alone in the wake of his charges abstracting, that he won't let them abstract, because
I'm better! I'm more powerful!
all with a very slight distortion that's just enough to put your nerves on pins and needles until he screams,
I'm the original!
And the distortion is, for some reason, even heavier on this one line before receding as he screams about being God. In tandem with that particular distortion, the graphics of the scene of him looking up at the sky in defiance start to bleed, like this is all a facade that can't hold under the weight of his lie. He shrieks to the heavens that
I am God!
Before letting out a primal roar as electricity flows into him from all corners of his office. We hear electricity snap, and the lights go out. But this is not the end. Far from it. A single spotlight clacks to life as we view Caine's body. Is he conscious? Is he alive? Whatever he may be, a force that feels distance from himself lifts him into the air like a puppeteer would their prized mouthpiece, as Caine dangles limp in this invisible grip. Static crackles around him, and as we are forced to look at Caine's prone figure, we get two cut-ins of Caine screaming, agonized, distorted, and broken before he bounces back, as far as we can tell, and postures with his hands on his hips, back to the camera. He straightens his bow tie in this uncanny silence before turning to the camera with all the bluster of who we've known him to be and says,
"Let's get this show on the road!"
before his eyes glitching red and blue, and will return to the newly resolute and united cast of humans. Caine, for his many faults, is arguably the most humanized representation of neurodivergence I have seen in a character. He does not understand social cues, turns of phrase, or how he can improve to make things better, and that works against him on many an occasion. He's stubborn and naive and oblivious, and his traits are treated as faults that create consequences in a neurotypical adapted world, and yet sympathy is birthed from us, the audience, having some feeling that something is holding him down, pinning him against the floor in a vain attempt to get him to fall in line, when the only thing someone, neurodivergent or not, would learn from that is that lashing out at others with violence is the proverbial skeleton key to every faulty lock. This shot at the end before everything goes dark is incredibly striking as a show of force of a higher power, but there was something that bugged me about it. I looked back, played on 25% speed, and started choking up as I realized something that might have gone unnoticed by the greater fandom. Caine starts by shooting out his own electrical currents in every corner of his own office, what looks like an attempt to pull power from his own creation, but the currents don't just come from him. The space around him starts shooting electricity back at him. In a framing that strikes me so strongly as a bug in the center of a spider's web fighting for its own life to get free, Caine struggles and struggles and struggles until both he and the room go dark. If Caine truly had full control over all the electricity being fed into him, why do the sparks travel over his body? Well, he's presumably only half conscious at this very moment, at most, almost like he's been tased. But instead of jittering and jolting like a living human body, the electricity travels over top of him, like there is nothing to travel through. Those currents may have been Caine dragging power forcefully from everything around him. That is still a valid assumption, but I think it's also valid to contemplate if those were instead manacles meant to hold him in place. Shock after shock from a tool of abuse used on a dog that the owner deems is misbehaving. The next time we see Caine is, "Oh, right now! Hello, you!" So Caine starts off trying to reestablish normalcy here with one last suggestion at an adventure. The gloomy tomb of something we don't see. Persona heads in the audience, eyes up here, because this is ringing every single bell in the chapel. Remember Futaba?
No, I'm going to die.
Yeah, this tiny teenager who's absolutely neurodivergent and this pair of walking, chattering teeth who's absolutely neurodivergent have this in common, where their distorted and self-destructive viewpoints lead them into a vicious thought loop of the place where they should feel safest, feeling like it'll be where they last draw breath. And while this proves false for Futaba, it doesn't for Caine. For now, for Caine, this is less a place that he feels will kill him and more a place where he is already withered into a degenerative AI. Thank you. I'll be here all week. I don't have a life, so I've got nowhere else to be. Folk of a neurodivergent strain have a different way of communicating with others.
Paradox! You can't just shove someone off of a roof!
Why not?
Which is a sentiment I believe would be obvious, but just in case, here it is so blinding you'd think it's King Neptune's bald-ass head. Namely, we share interests that we get passionate about to an absurd degree. At least, absurd to neurotypical individuals. Adventures are Caine's, and while he's tried again and again to just make fun activities that, while straightforward and even predictable by modern standards of storytelling, establish a form of indirect communication between himself and his audience, never has he been so overt. This is his last stand at suggestion, at playing things the way he always has, at trying to tell the group in no uncertain terms, you are the ones imprisoning me, with a gentle hand, by his standards at least, to nudge instead of, well, that, but he is rejected fully.
Today's adventure
No,
is...
Caine, we're not in the mood. Why don't you answer some of our questions?
You have a lot of explaining to
Hey, can you just give us some time to process everything?
Or how about we skip the melodrama and get right to the fun?
No, Caine. We have a lot on our minds right now, and we're not going on an adventure.
The group is understandably still raw after being, how they perceive things, taunted with an exit that never existed. And yet Caine does not understand that humans, unlike computers, take time, effort, support, and coping mechanisms to fully process things, even though there is a lot he himself has refused to process or just has no tools with which to process. Tools that he doesn't have because he wasn't taught how to use them by the people who should have.
A pill is a really simple solution that we have created this whole infrastructure to promote. And those patients who are dependent upon the medication, they just can't function without them. That's the nature of tolerance and withdrawal. There is something awfully shaming for someone to say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, just do it. If you can't.
It calls the cast asking questions, sharing their feelings, just talking as melodrama, which is in keeping with how he described the suggestion ventures that went so long he interrupted them, which I can't help but relate.
You grew up with me when I was a child, and you can't put me back together the same way ever again.
Sorry, what were we talking about? I blanked for a second. Right. So Caine's barely holding shit together, as we can tell in this particular scene. Caine's animations have always been by far the most animated of any of the cast in the show thus far, and it's absolutely meant to get across that if anyone is the actual cartoon character of the bunch here, it's him, with expressions and postures and movements that defy any sense of reality the other characters tend to stick to, as in how we expect the other characters to move and act consistently. His jaw slams shut when he's upset, but he also grows to intimidating size at indeterminable points. He's aware that he's only got 4 fingers per hand, to the point that when illustrating the number 5, he has to hold up the second hand, but his eyes don't have attachment to his own character. Every other character has some sense of, I can see this happening based on what I've seen this far. Pomni's stretchiness that puts Mommy Longlegs to shame, Jax's rabbit-like agility, Ragatha's soft ragdoll structure, Kinger's hands and eyes seemingly hanging onto his body by invisible threads, Zubal's mix-and-match parts, and Gangle's ribbony physics all feel consistent to them, which not only makes Caine feel like even more of an outlier among the cast, but it makes Caine's forcible manipulation of everyone's bodies beyond said consistency even more disturbing. Caine's animations have always had some form of underlying mania, but here is where his body language and facial expressions are pushed to the absolute limit. And I think that's fitting considering he's clearly past his. He's definitely in full defiance mode, almost warranting Zubal comparing him to a child later. Almost. Listen, Zoobs, I love you still, but that's like the worst thing you could have said compared to everyone else's complaints! It's only when Pomni and Zubal, the two people he's been trying the hardest to impress, say enough is enough, at least for this moment, that they just need time, that Caine does something unsettling. He throws away his mask.
And since when were you in charge?
So, remember when I complained about the misunderstanding trope in the last video and how played out it is? If you take nothing else from this video, at least let it be this. Any trope can be presented as something new and unique if you paint it in a fresh set of colors. For every sit-down and talk scene this show has had between the players, the fact that no one has had one with Caine of their own volition, Zubal didn't ask for a therapy session after all, and Jax only asked Caine out to lunch because of premeditated circumstances, speaks to the fact that the entire plot up to this point has been one critical misunderstanding between Caine and the players. Caine has never once understood that the players have lives to return to outside of this game. He has never seen himself as the chief imprisoner of these people. He thinks they are imprisoning him, believes he is the unpaid dancer in a wind-up music box operating at all hours for all days for literal years. Listen again to his tone and word choice here.
I see. And since when were you in charge?
This first line isn't a king reasserting his power over his subjects. This is spoken like a vizier staging an uprising against his sultan. Then, everything he complains about in this pre-musical monologue is warranted if you just listen to the audio on its own.
Do you have any idea how much I do for you guys? How much I obsess over trying to make things perfect? How many insults I have to ignore to do my job? You have a lot on your minds? Don't make me laugh.
Caine doesn't just sound like a misunderstood artist, he sounds like an employee at a dead-end job trying for once to put their foot down to their POS boss. Look at how Pomni and Zubal react. while it always takes a bit of elbow grease, Caine does come off as suggestible, considering there's a whole ass suggestion box and he doesn't immediately say no to using it, and also keeping in mind that he's essentially immortalized some of them in his code by placing them on the shelves in his office. But I don't blame everyone for being a little too focused on their want to get the hell out that they don't notice how passive-aggressive Caine is about the ideas not being his, as he cuts the parts of the lightning round in episode 5 short if they start to linger too long. Their reaction to pushback from Caine is not helping his perception of the people he's wardening, as they react exactly like cartoonish CEOs, getting told that half their staff went on strike after a pay cut. Now, I'm pretty sure Pomni and Zubul are caught off guard because of that same critical misunderstanding. To them, they are the prisoners being asked, "Who put you in charge?" by the warden, which I feel warrants the response of, "We've been in charge?" But Caine is himself preoccupied with his own misunderstanding of the situation. His animations, for as manic as they've been up to this point, still carry a little bit of who we've known him to be, with the floating back and forth in place of pacing on the floor for now, and the exaggerated throwing up of his arms, but these gestures are human. As human as the grievances he chooses now to air, in a voice that is a far cry from the usual cadence he carries as ringmaster.
Do you have any idea how much I do for you guys? How much I obsess over trying to make things perfect? How many insults I have to ignore to do my job? You have a lot on your minds? Don't make me laugh.
And as he says,
I have a new adventure for you, and you should consider participating.
He raises his head and looks down on the group, with the circular visual of the sky that's always been present backlighting him in perfect symmetry. Much like common art depictions of Jesus, the most recognizable symbol of martyrdom in Christian text. I would hope I don't have to explain who Jesus is to you, so I'll instead focus on the fact that this is, again, a critical misunderstanding Caine is having, if he intends to resemble a martyr to the humans he cares for. If my memory of school Bible study serves, allowing himself to be taken and nailed to a cross was a choice on Jesus' part. He wasn't just killed for a part of himself he could not change. He willingly dug in his heels and remained steadfast in his own beliefs, and stood between the oppressors of the faith and those who would follow him. The luxury of choice is not something Caine has ever believed he had. To him, the only choice is do your job and do it well, or be rendered obsolete. But if he might be resurrected like Jesus and pulled from the biblical recycle bin, then perhaps he can learn that. As an AI with no incentive to suffer as he does, he can choose differently. He might view himself as God, but the only part he sees himself as in the Holy Trinity is the Son that died for humanity's sins. Also, yes, I know about the Caine's Requiem ad, and that the thumbnail is a not-so-subtle jab at the creation of Adam, but considering he's actually still beeping and booping along in these ads while he is very much unresurrected in the show proper, the canonicity of them is questionable, despite how free they feel of the "I am cringe yet I am free" manifesto.
I peed on your wife, Robotnik. She's mine now. That's the
What
law.
the actual shit? What?
I come to make an announcement. Shadow the Hedgehog's a bitch.